Hey folks, I thought it might be worthwhile or even perhaps interesting to spend a bit of time doing what I'm calling a personal narrative checklist for the assignment. And my idea was to go through sort of point by point the elements that are most important and the things that you're mainly being graded upon. Most importantly, as always, I know I sound like a broken record, but be sure to reach out with whatever questions you have. So, first things first, sometimes there's a bit of confusion regarding page count. Even before we start discussing page count, let's just remember what the prompt for the assignment is. So, the assignment requires you to write a personal narrative of 3 to 5 pages telling a story about an experience from your life. Now, that experience can be anything at all. You really can make a narrative out of anything, and that's one of the beauties of writing a narrative. But 3 to 5 pages. So, you don't want to go under three, and if you go a little over five, that's okay. But one of the outcomes of this assignment is for students to show their ability to tell a narrative story in a concise way. When asked the question, how many pages is this essay? Many students will say three, some will say two, some will say four. But in reality, the essay you see on your screen here is actually just one page. You might say, Professor JJ, how is it one page? I see four separate pages there. Well, title pages don't count towards a page, and reference pages don't count towards page counts, and partial pages don't count towards a page count. So this would actually be a one-page essay, even though there's 4 pages, a title page, page of content, partial page, reference page. When you're assigned a 3 to 5 page essay, at least in my class, and for most classes that you'll encounter at New England College, that typically means 3 pages spilling onto a fourth, or at least 3 full pages, filling up 3 full pages. Format. So, how are you setting this essay up? In our last chat, I can't remember which student it was, but they asked a fantastic question at the end of the chat. And it was something that I had realized. I'm like, I don't even know if I've talked about this a great deal. And they said, should this essay be double spaced? And this is why I always encourage students to ask questions because and so I wanted to be specific about the format. So you're following APA format. APA format is more of a scientific format of academic writing. So it doesn't lend itself terribly well to creative writing, which is kind of what a personal narrative is. Having said that, you want to follow the general rules regarding APA format. So in terms of things like font, 12-point Times New Roman font, double spaced, 1 inch margins, you're going to have a title page, you're going to have your essay, and you'll notice that it's double spaced throughout. One of the things you don't want to do is use all caps for certain words. You don't want to randomly throw things into bold unless they are your title on your title page. You can use italics for editorial reasons. For example, although dialogue between characters is not in italics, a good way to signal to a reader that you're having thoughts and inner monologue is to change those words into italics. And that will signal to a reader, like, oh, these are the thoughts in the protagonist's head. They're not saying these things out loud. Remember, you do have the template on Blackboard. So let's take a quick look at that just to remind you what it is. So going to Unit 1, and the different resources you have at your disposal, you'll see right here the APA template. When you open the template, this is what it'll look like. It's in a Word file that's already prefabricated in proper APA format. So it tells you, put your title here, put your name here, school date, and so on and so forth. And you'll find some slight variations. I am not the sort of professor that if you accidentally put the date here in the class here, I would never in 1,000 years take points off for that. If you failed to put your title in bold, you'll actually see one of the example essays doesn't have the title in bold. I would never take points off for that. If you accidentally do the page number incorrect, I would never take points off for that. Those are minor things. Having said that, I would point them out in your grading feedback. So I would say, something along the lines of, hey, remember that in APA, your title and the title page should be in bold. And remember that the date you want to include is not actually the date that you're writing the essay, but rather the due date of the essay. So I'll definitely point those things out in your grading feedback, but I wouldn't take points off them. The expectation is that you will make mistakes. I'm hoping you will make mistakes because mistakes create learning opportunities where you can learn how to do it correctly. So let's say you do your title, but you forget to place it in bold. That's fine. No big deal. Not going to cost you any points, but I'll probably make mention of it in your grading feedback. So this is the APA template that's on Blackboard. And as you'll notice, it's already in proper format. Now, it's not like it's rocket science. It's not all that complicated. You might look at it and say, well, I can do that myself. That's no big deal. I mean, I can open a new Word file and do proper font and font size. And to an extent, that's true, but you would be surprised at how many little tiny settings you have to change in order to abide by proper APA. Let's move back to that document and take a closer look at some of the other things you want to look at before you turn in the final version, the graded version of your personal narrative. So again, here's an example of APA format. And like I just went over, remember, there's the template that you can use. So here are the things we've been discussing so far, and some of the things I'm going to talk about we haven't yet discussed and will soon. So compelling opening. We spent time talking about this in class, already looking at the journal assignments you all did. I'm loving the ideas you've come up with, and I gotta say, I don't want to inflate your egos too much, but to be fair, this section, I would say there's a solid 9 or 10 of you have clearly some really strong creative writing skills. So remember, that's an important part of a narrative, right? Grabbing the reader's attention and compelling them to read on. And you can go and take a look at the PowerPoint that's on Blackboard that discusses the different techniques when it comes to a compelling opening, as well. And, and of course, the journal that you're doing that's focused precisely just on that. Elements of a narrative. When you say personal narrative, one of the things that often happens is students hear in their head personal statement. And what they hear is a document that's supposed to talk about themselves in a more general sense, i.e., the sort of thing you would send to a college with a college application. This is not that. This is not a personal statement. A personal narrative is drastically different. A personal statement is you talking about yourself. You're writing a personal narrative. You got to break that framework of a personal statement. And remember, a narrative is a story. Stories contain particular elements. They have characters. We are social creatures. There are other people in our orbit, and you want to include those other people, right? So who are these other people? How do they fit into your story? If they are unimportant characters, don't spend a lot of time describing them. Settings are important. You can use settings to your advantage, right? So if you're gonna write about a happy day and ways that things worked out really well, then maybe the sun's shining and there's no clouds in the sky and it just feels like it's 74 degrees and perfect and the humidity is low. And when you describe that sort of setting, the reader moves along with you. It's a signal to them like, oh, this is a happy time. I think I'm following what's happening here. Thick sensory descriptions. Of course, we spent an entire class talking about this, but remember, it's not just about doing the show not tell technique. It's remembering not to use the show not tell technique. Timeline. You want the sequence of your events of your story to be clear to your reader. And the best way to do that is use clear topic sentences, right? So tell the reader when things are happening, right? That it's been 10 minutes since I broke my arm. It's been 30 minutes since my girlfriend told me they no longer wanted to spend time with me. It's been 20 seconds since my parent sat my sister and I down and told us they were getting divorced. Dialogue, when appropriate. You don't want to just throw in a bunch of people talking for no reason, but for important moments in your story, leverage dialogue to help your reader understand what's going on. Dialogue helps you with your own character. If your reader's trying to understand the sort of person you are and the sort of people that are in your story, what are they like? Well, the things they say and the things we say tend to be pretty good indicators of the sort of people we are. So if you want to highlight the idea of someone who is a jerk in your story, then make them say mean things to other people. If you want to highlight that someone's overly sensitive and compassionate, then have them say that. If you want to highlight that you're compassionate and trying to be understanding in a moment in your story, then have dialogue for yourself, right? So, setting, important. Use locale. Physical locations can help. You're in a spooky house, the floorboards are creaking, it's abandoned, and there were quarantine signs out front telling you that you weren't, don't trespass. That's a locale. You've created a physical environment, and your reader's going to feel the tension. They're going to feel that it's spooky. They're going to feel that it's a place that's forbidden, right? Time, right? The age of the story. When did it happen? You can do this as simple as, explaining what music was playing on the radio, right? So you can find ways of communicating time, setting in really unique ways that kind of grab the reader and pull them into your story. Atmosphere. It's cloudy, it's stormy, it's windy, it's cold, right? That creates an atmosphere. Your reader is going to expect something bad to happen. You're writing about the time you worked at a crappy summer job and you had a terrible boss who was super inappropriate and did everything wrong and was just mean to you. That's an important character. You want to make them a round character, three-dimensional. Make us believe who they are. What do they sound like? You can use hyperbole, right? So when you're writing dialogue, and don't stress if you're like, I don't know if these are the exact words the person said. It doesn't matter if it's the exact words the person said. It's just capturing what the essence of what they said was. If you're writing about the day that your boss called you into their office and fired you, but you can't remember exactly the color of the blouse that your boss was wearing and the way that she was wearing her hair that day, that's fine. Just make it up because those tiny details, although they're important to the story, they don't necessarily have to be 100% true. Include meaningful details. We talked about this, we spent a lot of time. But remember, leave out non meaningful description and details. This might be the single most common thing where students lose a point or two. Does it make you fail an essay? No, but it can make a student lose a few points. The stuff that carries your story forward, that's the stuff that's important.